It's funny because often we get tagged with the sloganeering. I would dare say that elbows up might be a slogan on the other side, but that's a discussion for another day.
All right, elbows up. Elbows up.
With me now is Conservative campaign manager Steve Outhouse. Hi, Mr. Outhouse. Pleasure to see you again. Thanks for making the time.
Great to see you too.
Strategically, what was the objective going into this trip?
Well, I think there's two main objectives, and I apologize for this cold I'm battling. But two main objectives. Obviously, the first one is to be part of the Team Canada approach and to be down south of the border and talking about how it benefits both Canada and the U.S. to have stronger relationships and tariff-free trade overall. And certainly, there's always a domestic angle to that as well. When you and I last spoke, we talked about how people want to see kind of more range from the leader and different sides of him, and I think that this chance to travel internationally is part of that, is showing different angles of the leader.
Was it hard to convince him of that, because it is different than a strategy that was employed, let's say, a year ago? Right.
No, I mean, this has been is something he's been talking about with members of caucus and members of the team, and now is the right time to do it, and so he was very pleased to do it.
Let me ask you about the timing and sort of the impetus, because it's not just the trip. It's sort of bookended by those two speeches. Mm-hmm. It was the trip to Europe as well, appearances on Peter Mansbridge's podcast, the Rogan podcast. In that Mansbridge podcast, Mr. Poilievre said, I'm changing tacks. I'm just going to talk to everybody. Yeah. I'm not just going to talk to people who kind of agree with me in the same vein. Is the timing of this motivated at all by where the Conservatives are right now in the polls?
Yeah. Look, I've been around politics a while. Polls come and go. They go up, they go down. I've worked on other campaigns in Alberta, where Premier Smith was low in the polls when we started our campaign. Premier Tony Wakeham was like 30 points underwater about preferred premier in the last public poll that was available. It doesn't stop us from just doing our job. In terms of timing, part of that is dictated by the parliamentary calendar, when break weeks happen and when you can get out and get on the road. And in terms of just the ability to book that, I mean, we've been working on that and with using that calendar as that basis.
Was it hard to book the Rogan podcast in particular?
So actually, Georges St. Pierre was the one who kind of made that connection, and from what I saw, basically the leader and Mr. Rogan were tweeting, or not tweeting, but texting back and forth, and they set it up themselves.
Oh, the two of them did it?
Oh, yeah. No, it's very much, I mean, he has this sort of, mythology of just being a very, tight run or very small group on his podcast, and that was very much the case. It was just the leader and Joe texting back and forth.
And as far as, when you talk about the domestic implications, on the podcast or elsewhere, is the idea, is the intended audience people who have already voted for you, or kind of what we discussed last time, trying to speak to people outside of that group?
It's a both and. I mean, I know that might sound like a little bit of a waffly or political answer, but I mean, certainly we want to continue to show people who've supported Mr. Poilievre in the past that he is still, consistent in his positions and is, very much a conservative that is presenting, options to this government. But what we've heard from people is, again, they want to hear him in a different light, in a different manner, a bit more personable and a bit more personal. And a 2.5-hour podcast, while fraught with potential peril, is, and for me as a campaign manager, you can kind of hold your breath and hope it all goes well. But he did a great job, and I think it did give a chance for people to see him in a different light.
Were you holding your breath at all? And I was sort of talking to you about before, because Mr. Rogan is someone who is, says wild things all the time, basically, to put it bluntly. And you can contain that in a 10-minute period, even 20, but 2 hours and 23 minutes.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential, but I have a lot of faith in our leader, and I knew that he was, prepared and was ready to go in and have a good discussion. And so I was very optimistic would go well.
Do you think, and I know you're saying polls are polls, and I know that campaign manager will tell me that, and the Liberals did in the last one too.
We're the only poll that matters, Pashy. Have you ever heard this one before?
Election day, yes. But was sort of any of can you take more risks, basically, now that you are not, 25 points ahead? In fact, the reverse is true.
Fair question. Look, I think you have to kind of lay out your agenda. You do have to be known. And I think, you referred the Mansbridge podcast. He made the joke near the end about how being the opposition leader is the worst damn job in the country. And it is hard for, opposition leaders to kind of break into that, mainstream media coverage, as it were, because the government of the day is setting the agenda and they're making making announcements and they're marshaling resources around and making things that are, government announcements. Appearing on a podcast like this is certain.
Just a reminder, gang, smash the like, hit subscribe. We work really hard at this stuff. Let's get back to the video.
A way that caught attention and will help, us with that dual goal. First of all, of helping promote Canada abroad, but then secondly, we certainly want to see or have more people see the leader in a personal way.
When you mentioned the agenda, I think the thing that really sort of started to become crystallized for me throughout the last period, including the initial trip and everything, was there is a differentiator at the moment between the way in which Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Carney are talking about the future relationship with the United States, right? One is saying this is a permanent rupture, and Mr. Poilievre is contending that it won't be permanent, that is more temporary in character. And then from a strategic, we'll debate the policy with other people, but from a strategic perspective, I wondered if you have any concerns about that, coming up against a sentiment among the Canadian public that feels the opposite, that supports the idea that it could be more permanent. And I was looking into polls to try and see, I keep reading headlines to that effect. Sure. One of them was from Nick Nanos at the end of February. The survey asked Canadians if they agree with the statement that the United States is a trustworthy ally of Canada. Nearly half disagreed. Another 26.9% said they somewhat disagreed. Only 9% agreed with the statement. Do you have any concern that pitch, which I fully understand from a policy perspective, might backfire strategically?
I mean, look, there's always risks in politics, and taking principled stances is one of them, obviously. I think one of the things that differentiate us from kind of that, it's funny because often we get tagged with the sloganeering. I would dare say that elbows up might be a slogan on the other side, but that's a discussion for another day. I think Canadians obviously, or not obviously, but I think Canadians honestly just want a deal. They would like to have that stability. They would like to see this put to bed. Our approach is no matter who's in the White House right now, if we look in the longer term, we're neighbors. We're going to continue to work together. Certainly diversification of trade is important, but that's going to take over, time to do. So, we do have a position on that we want to continue to work well with our American neighbors, and we want to see that relationship, back to some sort of normalcy. Ultimately, not to get too partisan on the other side, but we're not seeing a lot of results on that other side yet in terms of, whatever approach, whether it's if you want to say it's a permanent rupture, well then what's that being replaced with and where's that going?
Despite a lot of those, and look, I ask those questions all the time, the gaps between the rhetoric, let's say, and the reality in many instances. I'll circle back to where I started, which is, we are seeing, and yes, they are just polls, a lot of consistent polls now for a sustained period of time showing a substantial lead for the Liberals, more substantial than at the last time we saw you at the leadership convention, far more substantial than the months that followed the election. This is an odd question, but you have a lot of experience as a campaign manager. What do you think they're doing that is leading to that result? Based on our conversations with a lot of Canadians, I think they want to see the vote that they made last year make a difference. So they are looking at this government through a lens of hope, and that they want to see them deliver, first of all, the deal that was promised, and then secondarily, kind of the relief on affordability and all those, day-to-day things that matter very, very much to them. So there is a hopefulness, and I do believe that every time that the president decides to kind of, launch a new message track that sort of, captures the imagination of the public for the day, they want to see the Prime Minister and they want to see this government get results and deal with this. So I think that there is a bit of hope that's being put upon them. So ultimately, in the long run, if we're looking electorally, if we're boiling it down to that, will they deliver that? Will they deliver this deal that they promised that they would get by July of last year? Will they deliver relief for people in the cost of living? And I think that's where people will ultimately make decisions. Does time need to be on your side?
Time never hurts, but it's not going to be my call as to when that happens, for sure.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Mr. Outhouse, pleasure as always. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. My name's Aaron, this is Canadian Looney. We're gonna wrap it up. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a comment below. Check out this playlist, check out this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Smash the like, hit subscribe. Aaron at Canadian Looney. Ciao for now, we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks again for watching. We're out.